Number 9. Grant Amato. After losing his job as a nurse in 2018, Grant Amato became obsessed with a Bulgarian webcam model named Sylvie. He gave thousands of dollars to Sylvie in exchange for her time and attention. When he ran out of money, he began stealing it from the family members he shared a home with in Seminole County, Florida. In just a few months, he spent $200,000 communicating with Sylvie. Amato's family encouraged him to get mental help and even paid $15,000 to send him to a rehab facility for pornography addicts. His family let him come home in early 2019 under the conditions that he got a job and had zero contact with Sylvie. Within days, his father, Chad, caught him talking to Sylvie and told him to pack his things and leave. Amato shot his mother, Margaret, in the back of the head while she was using the family computer. He shot his father and brother as they walked in the house and attempted to stage the scene as a murder-suicide. After finding the family dead during a welfare check, deputies tracked Amato down at a local hotel and took him into custody. He gave conflicting stories but maintained his innocence and was ultimately convicted in the triple homicide. A jury declined to pursue the death penalty, so he received 3 life sentences. Number 8. Francesca Keel. 56-year-old Teresa Keel was arriving home at her apartment in Long Island, New York one night in 2016 when an attacker struck her in the face and head multiple times with a metal barbell. She suffered from severe brain and skull damage and remained in a vegetative state for 2 years until she died. Investigators discovered that Teresa's daughter, Francesca Keel, had attached a GPS device to her mother's car before the attack. They also found a record of Francesca calling the taxi company that picked up her boyfriend, corrections officer Ralph Kepler, near the scene. Additional evidence revealed that the couple had meticulously planned the crime. As it turned out, Francesca's family disapproved of her relationship with Kepler, who they thought was abusive and controlling. They were also involved in an ongoing money dispute with Kepler's family, which only deepened the tensions between the two parties. By the time Teresa was murdered, Francesca had completely cut ties with her family. Kepler pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and received a 22-year sentence. He'll be eligible for parole in 2040 at the age of 50. Francesca was convicted of manslaughter and was sentenced to 13 years. She'll be 36 years old at her first opportunity for release in 2031. Number 7. Christopher Thompson. In early 2020, Paula Thompson told her friends that if anything happened to her, to look to her adult son, Christopher, as the culprit. She was trying to get the 31-year-old to move out of her home in Des Moines, Iowa, but he refused to leave or get a job. Christopher had an explosive temperament, especially when he drank, which was often. At one point, Paula called the police and reported that Christopher was banging on her windows and acting drunk and belligerent. By the time officers arrived, he had left the scene. Christopher was on probation for a past crime, and the cops advised Paula to contact his PO, especially since drinking violated the terms of his release. During an argument about Christopher's chronic refusal to work that occurred shortly after the police incident, Paula told her son that she was done supporting him and expressed her disappointment at him for going nowhere in life. Christopher snapped and bludgeoned Paula and her pet cat to death with a crowbar. He put her body in a bedroom and spent the next several days playing video games and drinking. When Paula's friend wouldn't stop calling him in an attempt to reach his mother, Christopher finally admitted that he had killed her. He went to Walmart, bought some popcorn chicken that he ate in his truck, and then turned himself in to police. Thompson was convicted of first-degree murder and is serving a life sentence. Number 6. Verity Beck. Relatives of Reed and Miriam Beck became concerned when they were unable to reach the senior citizens in early 2023. The couple's son went to check on them at their home in Jenkintown, Pennsylvania, where they lived with their daughter, 43-year-old Verity Beck. When he arrived, he saw what looked like a body laying under a sheet. He dialed 911 as soon as he left the home. Officers were met with the unmistakable stench of decomposition when they arrived. They found Reed and Miriam's bodies in various states of dismemberment and a chainsaw nearby that they suspect Verity used to mutilate the remains. Both victims had been fatally shot. Authorities have yet to announce a motive for the killings, but they found evidence that someone had tried to break into a safe inside the house. Shortly before the 911 call was placed, Verity had told her brother that things were going badly in the household. He told her to call the police, but she said she needed more time. She was charged with first and second-degree murder and is being held without bail while awaiting the next steps in her case. Number 5. Terry Strawn. 6 days before Christmas in 2018, Hillsborough County, Florida Sheriff's Deputy Terry Strawn got on his radio and said he needed an emergency response because he had just killed his family. He explained where to find the bodies of his wife, Teresa, the couple's daughter, Courtney, and their granddaughter, and said that he would no longer be alive when they arrived at the scene. Strawn's colleagues did everything in their power to talk him down, but his mind was set. He asked for God's forgiveness and urged the department to make sure it gets help for employees who struggle with depression. When his co-workers arrived, he spoke with them briefly and then took his own life. Investigators were baffled as they spent months trying to identify a motive in the tragic crime. Until the day he killed his family, Strawn was a model member of law enforcement. Throughout his 30-year career, his superiors and the public both praised his kindness and skills. He had even convinced a teenage boy to get help one day when he said he was struggling with dark thoughts. Strawn's twin brother, Perry, told investigators that Terry had complained about a supervisor after he retired in 2017, saying that the issues between them were one of the reasons he left the force. But the supervisor wrote good things about Terry in an evaluation from that same year, and the details of any problems they may have had are unclear. A nearly 500-page report obtained by the Tampa Bay Times details how Terry and Teresa moved to Colorado after his retirement, but they moved back to Florida just months later after realizing that they couldn't afford the type of lifestyle they wanted there. But Strawn seemed excited to be back in Florida, where he had recently gotten approved to return to the force full-time. There were also no major issues in his marriage, other than the typical things couples sometimes fight over, like jealousy, and they seemed to be getting along in their most recent text conversation. And while he had mentioned money issues from time to time, he never seemed deeply distraught. Perhaps the biggest clues to what Strawn was going through are in some of his final transmissions to his co-workers. He said he had lost everything and had health problems, and it was clear that he was suffering from mental and emotional demons that he had kept well hidden until then. But the lack of clarity about what was going on in his mind left his co-workers and surviving loved ones without the answers they were hoping for. Number 4. Jimmy Robertson. 49-year-old Terry Robertson's colleagues became worried when she was a no-call, no-show for an important work meeting one day in 1997. A co-worker went to check on her at her home in Rock Hill, South Carolina, and found Terry and her husband Earl dead from horrific injuries. There was blood everywhere, including on the ceiling. Someone had slashed and bludgeoned the couple to death, leaving them with catastrophic head injuries, deep stab wounds, and other signs of a double murder that was carried out in a cold-blooded rage. Investigators were quick to turn their attention to the Robertsons' 21-year-old son, Jimmy, who had recently moved back in with his parents after flunking out of college and getting into drugs. Although Earl and Terry had welcomed Jimmy back into their home, they cut him off financially and refused to support his drinking and drug habits in any way. Law enforcement suspected that he flew off the handle and murdered the victims, and that he may have also been motivated by the prospect of inheriting their $2.2 million estate, but he never got his hands on any of the money. Instead, Jimmy and his girlfriend, Meredith Moon, were arrested on suspicion of murder. Moon, who claimed she waited outside in her car for Jimmy and played no part in the killings, took a deal and pleaded guilty to 2 counts of accessory after the fact. She was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Due to the gruesome nature of the crime, prosecutors pursued the death penalty in Jimmy's case. The jury agreed that it was an appropriate punishment. The convicted double murderer was initially slated to be executed in 2005, but he has managed to delay it through appeals. He remains on death row today, and it's unclear whether he has a scheduled execution date. Number 3. Andrew and Elizabeth Hawes. In 2008, a man named Martin Weltman called 911 and reported his roommate, 46-year-old Edwin Hawes, missing from their Andover, Minnesota home. Edwin's car had also vanished, and there was a large pool of blood in the driveway. Anoka County deputies immediately smelled bleach when they arrived at the scene. They found a crossbow, hammers, and a baseball bat strategically hidden on the property, as if someone had placed them there with plans to use them during an attack. Weltman told investigators that Edwin was entangled in a long-standing dispute with his siblings, Elizabeth and Andrew Hawes. They were at odds over money after finding out that Edwin had skimmed a family business and sold their grandmother's stocks for $600,000. Edwin distanced himself from his family and got orders of protection against his siblings, but their disagreements only intensified with time. At one point, Andrew was arrested for trying to run Edwin off a road. After his disappearance, police saw Andrew and Elizabeth sitting together in a parking lot near Edwin's home. Law enforcement returned later that day and found a similar crossbow to the one found at Edwin's house, along with a jacket, a container of bleach, and blood-stained rubber gloves. After failing to turn up any sign of Edwin in the local area, the Anoka County Sheriff's Department contacted authorities 200 miles, 322 kilometers away in Cottonswood County, where Andrew's girlfriend had a farm. A deputy arrived to find human remains being burned at the property, which were later identified as Edwin Hawes. Authorities then found the victim's car outside a church, covered in blood and with a bloody sledgehammer in the trunk. The evidence told a heartbreaking story of the torture Edwin suffered at the hands of his killers, who shot him with a crossbow, beat him, ran him over or dragged him with a car, and set his body on fire. Andrew and Elizabeth are both serving life sentences for their brother's murder. Number 2. Deadly Inheritance Feud. 48-year-old Michael Brown inherited several properties in Jamaica when his mother passed away in early 2023. He flew there from Hertfordshire, England, to put his mother to rest and to check up on a house he had started building prior to her death, which he planned to stay in during future visits. 4 days after the funeral, someone opened fire on Brown while he was in bed and shot him multiple times in the back. He was rushed to the hospital, where he was pronounced dead from his injuries. At the time, the victim was embroiled in a family feud about his recently inherited properties, and there are rumors that the dispute escalated into a heated and bitter argument shortly before Brown's death. Manchester Police Superintendent Shane McCalla told the Jamaica Observer that the dispute had been ongoing since 2015 and that they had intervened on numerous occasions, including in the days leading up to the murder. McCalla said that the family is feuding over 5 houses and that responding officers had taken all necessary action during their most recent interaction with the family. She also confirmed that 2 persons of interest had been taken into custody and were questioned for hours following Brown's death. Number 1. Colin C G Haney. One day in 2020, a young man named Colin C G Haney fatally shot his mother, Consuela Alejandra Haney, and 3 of his siblings, one by one, as they arrived at the family's home in Grantsville, Utah. He also tried to kill his father, Colin Haney Sr., who managed to wrestle the gun out of CJ's possession despite being shot in the leg. It was Utah's deadliest mass shooting in 13 years, and the first homicide in Grantsville in 20 years. Haney Sr. survived, and CJ also had a brother who was away at college at the time. CJ turned himself into authorities later that day. He never gave a motive for massacring his family, but allegedly told his father that he had planned to kill the entire family. Prosecutors declined to pursue the death penalty due to his age, but tried him as an adult due to the heinous nature of the crime. As part of a deal with prosecutors, CJ pleaded guilty to 4 counts of aggravated murder and 1 count of attempted murder. He was sentenced to life in prison and will remain in the juvenile justice system until he's 25. Thanks for watching. Would you rather experience the disappointment of catching a trusted family member sifting through your valuables, or overhear a loved one you look up to making fun of you to other relatives, and not in a joking manner? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you soon. Bye.